Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're starting our deep dive into the complete history and timeline of the Jurassic World saga, from 2015 all the way to 2025. This is part 1 of our series where we'll explore how John Hammond's failed dream of a dinosaur theme park was reborn as Jurassic World, and why it was doomed to fall apart once again. To understand Jurassic World, we need to rewind the clock. Back in the early 1990s, billionaire John Hammond and his company, InGen, had a vision. A living, breathing theme park where guests could walk among real dinosaurs. We all know how that turned out: chaos, danger, and tragic deaths on Isla Nublar. For decades, Hammond's dream remained in ruins. InGen struggled financially, lawsuits piled up, and dinosaurs on Isla Nublar were left to live in isolation, hidden from the world. Hammond himself grew older and more regretful, eventually dying before ever seeing his vision succeed. But in the early 2000s, Hammond's company changed hands. The corporation Masrani Global, led by Simon Masrani, bought InGen and resurrected the project. With billions in funding and modern technology, Masrani pushed forward what Hammond never could: a fully functional dinosaur resort. By 2005, Jurassic World officially opened its gates. Unlike Hammond's original park, Jurassic World was a success, at least for a while. It operated for 10 full years, pulling in over 20,000 visitors a day. Guests could kayak alongside stegosauruses, ride gentle herbivores in a petting zoo, and watch the terrifying Mosasaurus leap out of the lagoon to swallow sharks whole. It was Disneyland with dinosaurs, and the world couldn't get enough. But there was a problem. Over time, attendance started to decline. People got bored of dinosaurs. As crazy as that sounds, Masrani's team felt pressured to keep visitors excited, and that meant engineering new attractions. Bigger, scarier, and more dangerous. This is where Dr. Henry Wu, InGen's lead geneticist, stepped in. Wu had been working with Hammond since the original Jurassic Park, and now he was creating hybrids. Jurassic World's biggest gamble was the Indominus Rex, a genetically engineered dinosaur built from a mix of T-Rex DNA, Velociraptor, cuttlefish, and even tree frog genes. Designed to be scarier than anything nature could create, the Indominus was the park's attempt at boosting attendance. On paper it worked. It was massive, intelligent, and terrifying. But behind the scenes it was a ticking time bomb. The Indominus was highly aggressive, unpredictable, and incredibly smart. Worse, it had abilities no one anticipated: camouflage, thermal regulation, and problem-solving skills rivaling raptors. Dr. Wu had created a monster that even the park staff couldn't control. At the heart of this story are two key characters: Owen Grady, a former Navy man turned raptor trainer, and Claire Deering, the park's operations manager. Owen was skeptical of the Indominus from the start, warning that animals, even dinosaurs, aren't just assets. Claire, on the other hand, was focused on the park's bottom line and keeping investors happy. Meanwhile, military contractor Vic Hoskins had his own agenda. He saw Owen's trained raptors not as animals, but as potential weapons of war. To him, dinosaurs weren't just attractions, they were the future of combat. This clash of philosophies, science versus profit, compassion versus control, set the stage for the chaos that was about to unfold. In 2015, just as the Indominus was being readied for public display, disaster struck. The creature outsmarted its handlers, tricked them into opening the enclosure, and broke free. From that moment, Isla Nublar spiraled into chaos. Thousands of tourists and staff were trapped on the island as the Indominus rampaged across the park, killing for sport. Owen and Claire scrambled to protect Claire's nephews, Zach and Gray, who were caught in the middle of the disaster. The park's security measures failed one by one. Even the raptors Owen had raised since birth were eventually turned against their trainer, until they recognized the Indominus wasn't a true alpha. The climax of Jurassic World came when Claire made a desperate choice. She unleashed the park's original attraction, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the very same one from Hammond's original Jurassic Park. In an epic battle, the T-Rex blew the Velociraptor, and even the Mosasaurus joined forces to finally bring down the Indominus Rex. But victory came at a cost. Jurassic World was destroyed. Dozens were dead, the park was in ruins, and the dream of a dinosaur theme park had failed once again. Isla Nublar was abandoned, this time for good, or so the world thought. So that's where the Jurassic World saga begins. A dream reborn, a monster unleashed, and a park left in ashes. But this was only the beginning. In part 2, we'll dive into the immediate aftermath of Jurassic World's fall, the shocking choices made by InGen, and how the fate of Isla Nublar would lead to the events of Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapter of our journey into the Jurassic World timeline. After the fall of Jurassic World in 2015, the world watched in shock as Isla Nublar was abandoned. For years, the surviving dinosaurs were left to roam freely across the island. No fences, no containment, no human interference. For the first time since their resurrection, these prehistoric animals lived in their own ecosystem. But the peace wouldn't last. In the aftermath of the disaster, InGen and Misrani Global collapsed under lawsuits and public outrage. The company's reputation was in ruins and investors fled. But not everyone was finished with the dinosaurs. There were still people who saw profit and power in these animals. And one of the key players who remained was Dr. Henry Wu, the geneticist responsible for creating the Indominus Rex. He had escaped the chaos with valuable embryos and data, ensuring that the age of genetic hybrids was far from over. Meanwhile, the world faced a moral dilemma. The abandoned island was now a sanctuary, but also a ticking time bomb. Because by 2018, Mount Sibo, the volcano at the heart of Isla Nublar, began showing signs of eruption. Suddenly, humanity was confronted with a question. Should we save the dinosaurs or let nature take its course and allow them to go extinct once more? This debate split society. Animal rights groups argued that the dinosaurs were living creatures who deserved protection. Politicians and skeptics insisted that these animals were unnatural, dangerous, and should not be preserved at the expense of human lives. And in the middle of it all was Claire Deering. After the fall of Jurassic World, Claire had gone through a transformation. No longer the cold, business-focused operations manager, she became a passionate advocate for the dinosaurs. She founded the Dinosaur Protection Group, working to lobby governments and raise awareness. And when the U.S. Senate ruled against intervening, Claire turned to another option. A private rescue mission funded by a wealthy philanthropist named Benjamin Lockwood. Lockwood was no ordinary figure. He was once a partner of John Hammond himself, deeply tied to the origins of InGen. From his estate in California, Lockwood revealed his plan to relocate the dinosaurs to a new island sanctuary, far from human civilization. He recruited Claire to help organize the rescue, and she in turn reached out to Owen Grady, the only person who could reconnect with Blue, the last surviving Velociraptor and Owen's most loyal companion. But things were not what they seemed. Lockwood's aide, Eli Mills, secretly planned to exploit the dinosaurs for profit. Instead of relocating them to a safe island, Mills conspired with black market dealers to auction the creatures to the highest bidder. Dinosaurs would become weapons, trophies, and commodities. And worse, Mills and Dr. Wu were already working on a new hybrid, the Indoraptor, a smaller but even more lethal successor to the Indominus Rex. When Claire and Owen arrived on Isla Nublar, they were overwhelmed by the chaos of the volcanic eruption. Lava and ash rained down as the island's ecosystem collapsed in real time. In a desperate scramble, they and the mercenary team captured multiple species, including Blue. But the mercenaries betrayed them, leaving Claire and Owen to die as Isla Nublar burned. Only by sheer luck did they escape aboard the departing ship, witnessing the heartbreaking destruction of the island, and the apparent death of countless dinosaurs left behind. The survivors were transported not to a sanctuary, but to Lockwood's estate, where a secret underground facility prepared for the dinosaur auction. Wealthy buyers from around the world gathered to bid on creatures like ankylosaurs, Carnotaurus, and even a captured juvenile Allosaurus. But the centerpiece was the prototype Indoraptor, demonstrated as the next step in biological warfare. During the auction, chaos once again erupted. The dinosaurs broke free, Mills's plan unraveled, and the Indoraptor was unleashed upon the mansion. What followed was a terrifying game of cat and mouse through the halls and rooftops, with Owen, Claire, and a young girl named Maisie caught in the middle. Maisie was Lockwood's granddaughter, or so it seemed. But the truth revealed something even more shocking. She was a human clone, created using the same technology that resurrected the dinosaurs. Her existence confirmed that InGen's experiments had gone far beyond de-extinction. They had entered the realm of human cloning. In the climax, the Indoraptor was destroyed in a dramatic battle, but the dinosaurs held within the mansion faced a new threat. Poisonous gas filled the containment chambers, threatening to kill them all. Claire hesitated, torn between compassion and responsibility. She nearly opened the doors to release them but stopped, realizing that unleashing the dinosaurs into the wild could doom humanity. The decision, however, was taken out of her hands. Maisie, identifying with the dinosaurs as fellow genetic creations, pressed the button and set them free. One by one, the creatures stormed out of the estate into the forests of Northern California. Humanity's illusion of control was shattered. dinosaurs now roamed the mainland. The film closed on a chilling montage. A mosasaurus devouring surfers off the coast. A lion roaring face-to-face with a T-Rex at a zoo enclosure. Pteranodons nesting atop Las Vegas. The age of dinosaurs was no longer confined to an island. They were here to stay. And so, Fallen Kingdom marked the true turning point of the Jurassic World saga. No more fences. No more separation between humans and dinosaurs. For the first time in history, the two would coexist and collide across the planet. In Part 3, we'll explore the rise of the black market, biosyn's growing influence, and how a world forced to live alongside dinosaurs spiraled into chaos, setting the stage for Jurassic World dominion. After the events of Fallen Kingdom, the world had changed forever. Dinosaurs were no longer contained to a remote island. They were loose, scattered across the globe, and humanity suddenly had to deal with the consequences of living alongside prehistoric predators. At first it was chaos. Sightings of dinosaurs began popping up everywhere. A Compsognathus pack scavenging through trash in small towns. Pteranodons circling skies over major cities. Entire herds migrating across farmlands and highways. Incidents of human casualties rose quickly, from attacks at campgrounds to shipwrecks caused by giant marine reptiles. The illusion that humanity could keep these animals controlled was shattered forever. But while the public panicked, the underground flourished. A thriving black market for dinosaurs emerged almost overnight. The creatures that had escaped Lockwood's estate were joined by others bred illegally in labs around the world. Smugglers trafficked eggs, embryos, and live animals. Illegal fight rings staged brutal battles between raptors and other predators. The dinosaur black market became one of the most lucrative industries on the planet. Behind much of this activity was Biosyn Genetics, a corporation that had once rivaled InGen decades earlier. Led by CEO Louis Dodgson, a name Jurassic Park fans will remember as the man who once tried to steal embryos from Hammond's Park, Biosyn quietly positioned itself as the world's leader in dinosaur genetics. Publicly, they pitched themselves as saviors, claiming to be the only company capable of housing and studying these animals responsibly. Privately, they manipulated the chaos for their own benefit. Meanwhile, the original survivors of Isla Nublar were scattered. Owen Grady and Claire Deering lived off the grid, hiding deep in the Sierra Nevada mountains. Their mission was no longer running a park or leading a protection group. Instead, their focus was raising and protecting Maisie Lockwood, the clone girl whose identity had become a tightly kept secret. The world didn't know she existed, and Owen and Claire intended to keep it that way. But Maisie, now a teenager, struggled with the truth of who she was. A genetic copy of her mother, created through the same science that birthed the dinosaurs. Elsewhere, Blue, the last surviving Velociraptor, had not only adapted to life in the wild but had also reproduced asexually. She raised an offspring named Beta, proving that even without male DNA, these creatures could survive and multiply on their own. This discovery would later prove crucial, because Beta represented not only a breakthrough in genetics but also the future of how dinosaurs might spread unchecked across the planet. At the same time, the world faced an entirely new crisis that went beyond dinosaurs escaping into human environments. A plague of genetically engineered locusts began devastating crops across America and beyond. These insects were enormous, resistant to pesticides, and seemed unstoppable. The twist, however, was that they didn't attack fields planted with Biosyn-engineered seeds. This meant one thing. Biosyn had designed the locusts to create global food shortages, ensuring that only their products could survive. It was corporate greed on a catastrophic scale. While Owen and Claire's story revolved around protecting Maisie and Beta, another storyline unfolded thousands of miles away. Dr. Ellie Sattler, paleobotanist and veteran of Jurassic Park, uncovered the locust crisis and realized it was tied directly to Biosyn. She reconnected with Alan Grant, now living a quiet life as an archaeologist, and together they sought help from Ian Malcolm, who just so happened to be working with Biosyn as a guest lecturer. The stage was set for the original Jurassic Park trio to reunite, investigating the conspiracy from the inside. The two storylines, Owen and Claire on one side, the legacy characters on the other, would eventually converge at Biosyn's massive new headquarters, hidden within the Dolomite Mountains of Italy. This state-of-the-art sanctuary housed countless dinosaurs relocated under the guise of scientific study, but in reality, it was the heart of Biosyn's genetic empire. It was here that the battle for humanity's future would unfold. Part 3 of the Jurassic World timeline shows us the true consequences of releasing dinosaurs into the wild. No longer a contained disaster, this was a worldwide phenomenon reshaping ecosystems, economies, and human civilization itself. But more importantly, it revealed the sinister role of biosin, not only exploiting dinosaurs but threatening the entire global food chain. In Part 4 we'll dive deeper into the rise of biosin, the locust crisis, and how both Owen and Claire's fight to protect Maisie collided with the original Jurassic Park heroes' mission to expose the truth. By the time biosin rose to power, the world had already accepted that dinosaurs were here to stay. Governments struggled to regulate them, while corporations competed to control their DNA. And in the middle of it all, biosin claimed they had the solution. Their headquarters in the Dolomite Mountains became a supposed sanctuary, a place where dinosaurs could live in peace, free from poachers and chaos. But beneath the surface, this was anything but a sanctuary. It was a laboratory, an empire built on genetic manipulation. Eli Mills's betrayal back at Lockwood's estate had shown just how dangerous corporate greed could be. But Lewis Dodgson took it to another level. As biosin's CEO, Dodgson had access to InGen's stolen research, Dr. Wu's genetic expertise, and an entire global network of scientists, politicians, and military contractors in his pocket. To the public, biosin was the savior of the post-Jurassic World era. In reality, they were shaping evolution itself. One of their most ambitious projects was the engineered locust swarm. These massive insects were designed to devastate farmlands not using biosin seeds, effectively forcing the world's agricultural system to depend on them. It wasn't just about money. This was control. Food, resources, and survival would all be tied to one company. Dr. Ellie Sattler saw this crisis firsthand when she investigated fields reduced to wastelands. The locusts burned through crops like wildfire, leaving nothing behind. And when she examined their DNA, she realized the horrifying truth. They carried traces of prehistoric genes. To uncover the truth, Ellie reached out to Alan Grant. 4 years, Grant had avoided the chaos of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, retreating back to fossils and lectures. But Ellie's discovery pulled him back into the fight. Together, they reconnected with Ian Malcolm, who was already working inside biosin's headquarters as a lecturer. On the surface, Malcolm appeared to be cooperating, but in reality he was leaking information to expose biosin's corruption. Meanwhile, far away in the Sierra Nevada mountains, Owen and Claire had their own battle. Maisie, the young girl they had sworn to protect, was struggling with her identity as a clone. She felt trapped, isolated from the world, and desperate for answers about who she really was. That vulnerability became the perfect opening for biosin. Their agents kidnapped Maisie along with Blue's offspring, Beta, and transported them to biosin's sanctuary. This kidnapping wasn't just about Maisie as a person, it was about her genetics. She wasn't merely a clone of Charlotte Lockwood. She had been engineered with unique modifications that allowed her to survive genetic diseases. Dr. Wu believed that Maisie's DNA could hold the key to solving not only the locust crisis but the next stage of human evolution. And Beta, Blue's asexual offspring, was just as important. The ability for dinosaurs to reproduce without mates proved they could adapt and spread endlessly. Studying Beta could change genetics forever. Owen and Claire's rescue mission pulled them into the wider conflict. They followed the trail of Maisie and Beta into the world of dinosaur poachers, smugglers, and black markets. This journey eventually led them to biosin, where their story collided with Ellie, Alan, and Malcolm. For the first time in decades, the original heroes and the new generation stood side by side, fighting the same enemy. At biosin's headquarters, everything came to a head. The sanctuary was home to dozens of species, but it wasn't a paradise. It was a controlled environment designed to test, monitor, and manipulate evolution itself. Dodgson had turned dinosaurs into data, locusts into weapons, and human genetics into a business model. What Hammond had once dreamed as a celebration of life had become a corporate dystopia. Part 4 marks the moment when the Jurassic saga shifted from survival stories on isolated islands to a global conspiracy threatening the entire world. No longer was this about whether dinosaurs should exist. Now it was about who controlled life itself, and whether humanity could survive in a world where corporations treated genetics like a commodity. In Part 5 we'll move into the heart of Jurassic World Dominion, the reunion of heroes, the daring rescue of Maisie and Beta, and the battle inside biosin's headquarters that brought everything to a dramatic climax. The stage was set. Dinosaurs roamed the world. Biosin controlled the most advanced genetic sanctuary on the planet. And both Owen and Claire, along with the legacy heroes Ellie, Alan, and Malcolm, were on a collision course that would determine the future of humanity. Inside biosin's mountain stronghold, the stakes were higher than ever. Maisie Lockwood, the cloned granddaughter of Benjamin Lockwood, was now a captive, studied like a specimen rather than treated like a human being. Dr. Wu believed that her unique DNA held the secret to curing the locust plague, as well as unlocking breakthroughs far beyond dinosaurs. Alongside her was Beta, the offspring of Blue, whose existence defied everything scientists thought they knew about reproduction. Together, Maisie and Beta represented the ultimate prize in Biosyn's pursuit of genetic control. For Maisie, the experience was terrifying but also eye-opening. She discovered the truth about her mother, Charlotte Lockwood, the brilliant scientist who had cloned her not as an experiment, but as a daughter. Charlotte's innovations in genetic modification allowed Maisie to live without inheriting her mother's fatal disease. For the first time, Maisie understood that she wasn't just a copy. She was loved, chosen, and created with care. This revelation gave her strength, even as Biosyn tried to use her as a key to their empire. Meanwhile, Owen and Claire were closing in. Their journey through the underground world of dinosaur poaching had brought them face to face with smugglers, mercenaries, and black market arenas where dinosaurs were sold like weapons. Every step showed how far humanity had fallen since the days of Jurassic World. Dinosaurs had become currency. But nothing mattered more to Owen and Claire than finding Maisie and bringing her home. At the same time, Ellie Sattler and Alan Grant infiltrated Biosyn under the guidance of Ian Malcolm. Ellie's mission was clear: expose the locust conspiracy and prove that Biosyn had engineered the plague. Grant, though reluctant to return to a world of living dinosaurs, found himself once again drawn into the fight. And Malcolm, the voice of chaos since the very beginning, used his position within Biosyn to feed information to his old allies, even as he played a dangerous game with Dodgson and his executives. Inside Biosyn's sanctuary, the scope of the operation became clear. Dinosaurs of every kind filled the valley, herds of Parasaurolophus, packs of Dimetrodon lurking in the caves, and apex predators like Giganotosaurus stalking the wilderness. This wasn't just a zoo. It was a controlled ecosystem, a living laboratory where Biosyn manipulated species at will. And all of it was under constant surveillance. It didn't take long for everything to unravel. Ellie and Grant uncovered the truth about the locusts, smuggling out DNA evidence that tied the swarm directly to Biosyn. Owen and Claire infiltrated the facility to rescue Maisie, their paths colliding with the legacy heroes in the middle of the chaos. And when Dodgson realized his empire was crumbling, he triggered desperate failsafes that only made the situation worse. The sanctuary became a battlefield. Fire raged across the valley, swarms of giant locusts spread destruction, and predators were unleashed in the chaos. The Giganotosaurus, larger and more powerful than even the Tyrannosaurus, stalked the humans as they fought to escape. What was once a symbol of Biosyn's control turned into proof that nature could never truly be contained. For the first time in the franchise, the old and the new heroes stood together. Owen and Claire fought side by side with Alan, Ellie, and Malcolm, each bringing their own strengths to the table. Decades of history converged in a single desperate mission: survive Biosyn, save Maisie and Beta, and stop Dodgson's grip on the future of life. Part 5 represents the true convergence of the Jurassic World saga. No longer were the stories separate threads of past and present. Dominion brought them together, proving that everything since John Hammond's dream of Jurassic Park had led to this moment. The dinosaurs were here to stay, the corporations were exposed, and humanity was forced to face what it had unleashed. In Part 6, we'll dive deeper into the legacy characters' return, exploring how Alan, Ellie, and Malcolm finally closed the circle on a story that began back in 1993, and how their reunion with the new heroes shaped the climax of Dominion. When the world of Jurassic World finally collided with the legacy of Jurassic Park, it wasn't just a crossover, it was the closing of a circle. Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, and Ian Malcolm, the survivors of Hammond's original vision, found themselves once again in the middle of chaos, standing shoulder to shoulder with Owen Grady and Claire Dearing, the survivors of Jurassic World's collapse. For the first time, the old and the new were united, brought together by the same fight: survival, truth, and the future of life on Earth. Ellie Sattler had been the first to recognize the threat of the locust plague. She knew the insects weren't natural, and her instincts proved right. Bringing Alan back into the fray was more than nostalgia, it was necessity. Together, they carried the same bond forged decades earlier, and their trust in one another made them the perfect team to infiltrate Biosyn's labs. Alan, who had once sworn never to deal with dinosaurs again, reluctantly agreed. He knew that ignoring the problem would only mean repeating the past. Ian Malcolm, as always, was the voice of chaos. He had been working with Biosyn as a lecturer, appearing to play along with Dodgson's empire, but deep down, Malcolm never trusted them. Using his position, he fed Ellie and Alan information from the inside, becoming the unlikely key to cracking the conspiracy. His sarcastic wit masked genuine concern. He had warned humanity for decades that life finds a way, and once again, his warnings were proven right. Meanwhile, Owen and Claire's mission to rescue Maisie intertwined with the legacy hero's quest. For Claire, this was personal redemption. She had once managed Jurassic World as a business, blind to the consequences. Now she risked everything to protect a single child and undo the mistakes of her past. Owen, always the protector, was driven by loyalty, to Maisie, to Blue, and to the idea that dinosaurs deserved respect, not exploitation. The convergence of these two groups created one of the most powerful dynamics in the entire franchise. Alan Grant meeting Owen Grady was a moment fans had waited for. The old-school paleontologist who once studied raptors as fossils, coming face to face with the man who had raised them like family. Their philosophies couldn't have been more different, yet both carried scars from their encounters with these predators. The mutual respect was quiet but clear. Ellie and Claire also reflected one another. Ellie had been there at the birth of Hammond's dream, watching it collapse in tragedy. Claire had been there for its rebirth, and its collapse all over again. Both women knew what it meant to witness humanity's arrogance firsthand. And both knew the responsibility of trying to make things right. And then there was Maisie. Her bond with both generations tied the stories together. She wasn't just a child needing rescue. She was living proof of how far genetic engineering had gone, not only resurrecting dinosaurs but crossing the line into human cloning. Her presence reminded everyone, from Malcolm to Claire, that the ethical questions of Jurassic Park were never really answered. They had only grown bigger. When all of them finally stood together inside Biosyn's burning sanctuary, the weight of history was undeniable. This was no longer just about survival. It was about legacy. Alan, Ellie, and Malcolm represented the past, the warnings unheeded. Owen, Claire, and Maisie represented the present, the consequences unleashed. And together, they all symbolized humanity's future, one that could no longer deny the reality of dinosaurs in the modern world. Part 6 of the saga reminds us that Jurassic World Dominion wasn't just an action story about dinosaurs. It was the culmination of 30 years of storytelling, a merging of generations, and a reminder that humanity's choices echo far beyond one park, one island, or even one corporation. It was about people across time facing the same truth. When you play God, chaos always follows. In Part 7 we'll dive into Biosyn's empire itself, the terrifying rise of the Giganotosaurus, and the crisis with the locusts that nearly tipped the planet into ecological collapse. At the heart of Jurassic World Dominion lay the empire of Biosyn. To the outside world, it was a shining example of science at its best. A sanctuary where dinosaurs could live in peace, a research hub dedicated to understanding and protecting life. But beneath the polished image was a corporation built on deception, greed, and control. Louis Dodgson, now CEO of Biosyn, had turned the mistakes of InGen into a business plan. With stolen research, government contracts, and Dr. Henry Wu at his side, he positioned Biosyn as the world's leader in genetics. Nations sent their captured dinosaurs to the Dolomite Sanctuary, trusting Biosyn to care for them. Investors poured billions into the company, believing in their promise to protect the future. But Dodgson had no intention of protecting anything. His true goal was to own life itself. The most dangerous of Biosyn's creations wasn't even a dinosaur. It was the locust plague. Massive, prehistoric-sized insects, engineered to devour crops across the world. The twist was that they left fields grown with Biosyn seeds untouched. It was a carefully calculated weapon, disguised as a natural disaster. With every harvest consumed, countries would have no choice but to rely on Biosyn's products. Control the food and you control the planet. Dr. Wu, however, began to doubt. 4 years, he had justified his creations, from the Velociraptor breeding programs to the Indominus Rex and Indoraptor. But now, watching the locust plague spiral out of control, even he saw the danger. His work had escaped him. Humanity wasn't on the brink of progress. It was on the brink of collapse. While Wu wrestled with guilt, Dodgson pressed forward. He ruled his empire with arrogance, believing Biosyn untouchable. Inside the sanctuary, dinosaurs of every kind roamed freely, tracked and studied with implanted chips. It was meant to look like paradise, but in reality, every animal was monitored, controlled, and treated as property. Among the predators inside this so-called sanctuary was a new apex giant, the Giganotosaurus. Larger than even the Tyrannosaurus rex, the Giga was a symbol of Biosyn's power, a living reminder that they controlled the deadliest creatures in history. But in truth, the Giganotosaurus was uncontrollable. Its presence in the valley was less about science and more about intimidation, a monster lurking in the shadows of the sanctuary, waiting for the right moment to remind everyone that nature doesn't play by corporate rules. When Ellie Sattler, Alan Grant, and Ian Malcolm uncovered proof that biosin had engineered the locusts, the illusion of safety collapsed. Dodgson tried to cover his tracks, even attempting to destroy the evidence by burning the locusts alive. But in true Jurassic fashion, this reckless act backfired. The burning swarm escaped, igniting the forest and setting the entire valley ablaze. In seconds, Biosyn's pristine sanctuary turned into a death trap. Now, humans and dinosaurs alike were caught in chaos. Fire spread through the valley, predators panicked, and the sanctuary's control systems failed. Owen, Claire, Maisie, Ellie, Alan, and Malcolm were forced to navigate the collapsing facility while dodging not only the flames, but the creatures freed by the disaster. And at the center of the danger was the Giganotosaurus, the largest carnivore the series had ever unleashed. The confrontation with the Giga became one of Dominion's most defining moments. Facing off against the T-Rex, the same Rexy that had survived since the days of Hammond's original park, the battle symbolized more than survival. It was a clash of titans, nature's most iconic predator against its oversized challenger. And when Rexy, with the help of a Therizinosaurus, finally brought down the Giga, it was more than a victory. It was a reminder that despite all of humanity's interference, the natural order still found balance. Biosyn's empire, built on arrogance, was consumed by the very chaos it thought it could control. Dodgson himself met his end in the same way Nedry had decades earlier, trapped, betrayed by his own hubris, and killed by the very creatures his company exploited. History had come full circle. Part 7 highlights the heart of Dominion's conflict. Not just dinosaurs running wild, but humanity's attempts to weaponize and monopolize life itself. Biosyn thought it could dictate evolution, but nature, as always, proved unpredictable. In Part 8, we'll cover the final act, the rescue of Maisie and Beta, the downfall of Biosyn, and how the saga concluded with humanity forced to coexist with dinosaurs once and for all. As Biosyn's sanctuary burned and chaos consumed the valley, the story of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World reached its final act. What began decades earlier with John Hammond's dream of wonder and profit had spiraled into a global crisis. Now the survivors, old and new, stood together in a desperate fight to make it out alive. For Owen and Claire, the mission was simple: save Maisie and reunite her with Blue's baby, Beta. For Alan, Ellie, and Ian, the mission was to escape with proof of Biosyn's crimes and expose the truth. For Dr. Henry Wu, redemption hung in the balance. And for humanity as a whole, the question remained: could mankind coexist with the creatures it had unleashed? Inside the crumbling facility, the group raced through collapsing systems, smoke-filled corridors, and dinosaurs driven into panic by the spreading fire. Owen proved once again why he had earned Blue's trust, tracking Beta with precision and refusing to leave without her. Claire, who had once been obsessed with attendance numbers and quarterly profits, risked her life without hesitation, showing how far she had come since the fall of Jurassic World. And Maisie, no longer just a child to be protected, showed courage and resolve, embracing the truth of who she was, not a mistake but a miracle. The reunion of Maisie with Beta was one of the story's quiet triumphs. It was more than a rescue, it was a symbol of family loyalty and the bond that transcended species. Blue and Beta disappeared back into the wild, leaving Owen and Maisie behind, but the message was clear. These creatures didn't belong in cages or labs. They belonged to the world. Meanwhile, Dodgson's empire collapsed around him. In a final echo of history, he met his end at the claws of Dilophosaurs, the same species that had killed Dennis Nedry 30 years earlier when he tried to steal InGen's embryos. It was poetic justice, a reminder that greed and arrogance would always be punished in this world of dinosaurs. The survivors escaped aboard Biosyn's evacuation system, a rare moment where heroes from two generations stood side by side. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, finally rekindling the bond that had always existed between them, walked away from the disaster hand in hand. Ian Malcolm, ever the cynic, once again lived to say, "I told you so." And Owen, Claire, and Maisie emerged as a family, scarred but whole. Dr. Henry Wu, the man who had engineered so many of the franchise's disasters, finally found a measure of redemption. Using Maisie's genetic code and what he had learned from Charlotte Lockwood, he engineered a solution to stop the locust plague. For the first time, Wu's work gave life instead of taking it away. It didn't erase his sins, but it showed that even those who create chaos can choose to make things right. In the aftermath, the world was forced to accept a new reality. Dinosaurs were no longer contained on islands, no longer hidden in labs, no longer attractions in a theme park. They were part of Earth's ecosystem. Pteranodons shared the skies with birds. Triceratops herds roamed alongside elephants. Mosasaurus hunted whales in the open sea. Humanity had lost the illusion of control forever. But perhaps that was the point. The saga that began with Hammond's dream of playing God ended with a reminder that life cannot be owned, fenced in, or monetized. Dinosaurs were not monsters, not weapons, not assets. They were animals. Living creatures that deserved respect and a place in the world. Humanity's challenge was not to dominate them, but to live with them. The closing words of Dominion reflected the theme that had echoed since Ian Malcolm first said it 30 years earlier. Life finds a way. What began as a cautionary tale about greed, science, and chaos ended as a story of coexistence. The age of the Jurassic World had truly begun, not as a park but as a planet. And so, the Jurassic saga came full circle. From John Hammond's hopeful vision to InGen's collapse to Masrani's park to Biosyn's corruption, the same lesson repeated. When humans try to control life, chaos follows. But when humans learn to live with life, even when it's wild, dangerous, and unpredictable, there's hope for the future. That is the legacy of Jurassic World. Not a dream of profit, not an empire of control, but the reminder that this world has never belonged to us alone. We share it, and we always will. When Jurassic World Dominion hit theaters in 2022, it marked the end of the saga as fans knew it. But not long after, an extended edition was released, adding 14 extra minutes of footage. And while that may not sound like much, those minutes added depth, expanded character arcs, and even gave us a better sense of what life in this new Jurassic age really looked like. The extended edition opened with a prologue that audiences had only glimpsed in marketing material before. It showed dinosaurs in their natural world 65 million years ago. For the first time we saw feathered dinosaurs, a more accurate representation of how many species truly looked. The sequence depicted the Giganotosaurus killing a Tyrannosaurus rex, a fight that echoed through time and set up the rivalry that would play out millions of years later in Biosyn's sanctuary. It was cinematic poetry, the ancient battle of giants replayed in the modern day. The prologue then cut to the present, showing the Mosasaurus attacking a fishing boat. This wasn't just spectacle. It set the tone for Dominion as a story not about a theme park, but about a world learning to live alongside predators too big to ignore. Humanity's illusion of control was gone, and the extended edition made that point stronger than ever. Throughout the film, added moments gave us a closer look at daily life in a world filled with dinosaurs. Black market scenes ran longer, showing the cruelty of smuggling operations and the danger of illegal breeding programs. Claire's compassion was emphasized in new shots, particularly as she tried to save captive dinosaurs that were suffering. Owen's bond with Beta also felt more fleshed out, as subtle additions built on his determination to reunite the young raptor with Blue. Even legacy characters benefited from the extended edition. Alan Grant had moments that reinforced his long-standing skepticism of genetic meddling. Ellie Sattler's drive to uncover the Locust conspiracy felt sharper and more personal. And Ian Malcolm, well, his dialogue was extended in just the right way, giving us more of his trademark sarcasm and philosophical warnings. The action also flowed more naturally with these additions. Longer dinosaur chases, extra beats of tension, and a better rhythm to the sanctuary's collapse all made the extended edition feel closer to what director Colin Trevorrow had envisioned. The Giganotosaurus showdown in particular carried more weight thanks to the prologue, making its final fight against Rexy feel like the closing chapter of an age-old rivalry. But perhaps the biggest gift of the extended edition was how it tied together the entire saga thematically. From the prehistoric prologue to the closing scenes of humans and dinosaurs coexisting, it painted Dominion not just as the end of a trilogy, but the end of a 30-year story. Hammond's dream, Malcolm's warnings, Grant and Sattler's discoveries, Claire and Owen's growth, Maisie's identity and Wu's redemption, all of it came together more cleanly with those added moments. In short, the extended edition wasn't just longer. It was better. It gave fans more of what they loved, deepened the message, and reminded us why Jurassic still holds such a powerful place in pop culture. In Part 10 we'll look to the future, where the franchise might go after 2025, what stories are left to tell, and why dinosaurs will always find a way back onto the big screen. The story of Jurassic Park and Jurassic World may have concluded with Dominion, but if there's one lesson this franchise has taught us, it's that life and stories find a way. The dinosaurs aren't going anywhere, and neither is our fascination with them. So where does the Jurassic saga go from here? First, let's talk about the obvious. Universal Pictures is not going to let one of its biggest franchises stay extinct. Jurassic World alone grossed over $1 billion in 2015, and Dominion pulled audiences back into theaters even after nearly 30 years of dinosaur films. The appetite for these stories is still massive. So while Dominion wrapped up the narrative of Claire, Owen, Maisie, and the legacy characters, it was never meant to be the end of the brand. In fact, Dominion's ending left the door wide open. Dinosaurs are no longer confined to islands, labs, or cages. They are part of the world. From Mosasaurus sharing the oceans with whales, to pteranodons flying over city skylines, to herds of herbivores roaming free alongside elephants and rhinos, this is no longer a theme park story. It's a global one. That shift in setting changes everything. Future stories could explore how governments, corporations, and ordinary people adapt to this new reality. Do nations establish sanctuaries like Bison's Valley, but actually run them responsibly? Do black markets keep exploiting dinosaurs as weapons and exotic pets? Do conservationists fight to protect them the same way we protect endangered species today? The possibilities are endless. One potential path is a fresh trilogy with new characters. Dominion wrapped up the arcs of the original and Jurassic World casts, so a future story could introduce a new generation. Scientists, adventurers, or even children who have grown up in a world where dinosaurs are normal. Imagine a teenager in 2035 who doesn't remember a time before dinosaurs roamed free. To them, a T-Rex might feel as ordinary as a lion or bear feels to us. That perspective could give the franchise a bold new angle. There's also the possibility of going smaller and more intimate. Instead of another globe-spanning blockbuster, Universal could tell contained stories. A family surviving in a rural town as dinosaurs move into the area, or a rescue team tracking a loose predator in a city. Think survival thriller rather than park disaster. Dinosaurs work in any genre: horror, adventure, even drama. Dominion proved the world is big enough for countless stories. Another option? Go back in time. Fans have long wanted a fully prehistoric film, showing dinosaurs in their natural era without humans at all. Dominion's prologue gave us a taste of that, and the reception was overwhelmingly positive. A movie that plays like a documentary or survival epic about dinosaurs before extinction could be groundbreaking. No hybrids, no labs, just nature red in tooth and claw. Of course, we can't ignore the possibility of television. Streaming platforms thrive on world building, and Jurassic could easily expand into episodic storytelling. An anthology series set in the aftermath of Dominion could follow different groups around the globe, each facing their own dinosaur challenges. Think of it as a Jurassic World expanded universe, with room to experiment and explore ideas the films don't have time for. But maybe the most exciting possibility is something that takes the themes of Jurassic Park to the next level. Every film so far has warned us about greed, control, and arrogance in the face of nature. But what if a future story showed humanity finally learning, finally respecting dinosaurs not as monsters, but as equals? That doesn't mean peace. Dinosaurs will always be dangerous. But it does mean balance. A world not of humans versus dinosaurs, but humans with dinosaurs. Whatever the path forward, one thing is certain. Dinosaurs will never lose their grip on our imagination. Since the very first movie in 1993, audiences have been captivated by the sight of a brachiosaurus stretching its neck into the sky, a velociraptor stalking in the shadows, a T-Rex roaring against lightning. That magic isn't going away. So maybe Dominion closed the book on one era of the franchise. But the next era is already stirring. Somewhere out there, Universal and its creators are dreaming up the next story, a story that will once again remind us that we can resurrect the past, but we can never control it. The future of Jurassic isn't about parks or profits. It's about possibilities. Dinosaurs are here to stay, both in their world and in ours. Life will always find a way.
you.